What is up? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Shred Show Live. I am your host, Josh Pitts, and it is Red Friday. I love Jim because he even wore red. He probably didn't even know it's Red Friday, but he's wearing red right there with me. Remember, everyone deployed. Big shout out to all our veterans out there. Shout out to our veteran community. But I'm excited. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know Jim Paolino, I am excited to introduce. He's become a good friend of mine, and we're going to be talking about something that I truly believe is very impactful. Coopertition is something we're going to, I think I nailed it on that one. I might have said it right. I may have not. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to have Jim, founder and CEO of Lodestar, on the show. And we're going to be talking about this, yes, competition is fierce right now, but cooperation is absolutely necessary. And if we do not cooperate, we will fail as an industry. Ladies and gentlemen, come shred with us. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm so excited. Jim Paolino, good morning, brother. What's up?
Good morning. Fun Shirt Friday or Red Shirt Friday.
Yes.
I like it.
Fun Shirt Friday, Red Shirt Friday. I love wearing red on Fridays, just remembering everyone deployed. And Jim, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know Jim, he is the CEO and founder of Lodestar. And I'm excited. Him and I actually recently had an opportunity to do his podcast. Why I have so much respect and admiration for Jim is because he's heard me talk about podcasting in the past. And he actually said, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go and do it. I'm going to actually go put my money where my mouth is. And he went out and did it. He actually has his own podcast. And Jim, remind me what the podcast is called.
Sure. It's Lodestar's Lending Leaders.
Easy enough. Right there. Lodestar's Lending Leaders. Yep. That triple L, baby. Triple L. But I'm excited to have you. For those who maybe don't know you, I mean, you've been in this industry for a long time. Maybe just a quick introduction of yourself and kind of your experience in the industry.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is always a blast. Part of the fun I've had coming on these podcasts is why I decided to start my own. And yeah, I got to say, You make it look easy, especially with live and everything like that, because it is not as easy as you make it look. Been in the industry now all my life, really. I grew up in the title insurance space, started Lodestar back in 2013 to solve a simple problem, tell people how much they're going to pay when they buy a house. So we work with lenders all throughout the country of all sizes to quote fees up front. That's it.
Boom.
So I've been trying to do a lot in content, trying to, as we'll get into, be kind of that next wave of folks talking in the industry. Being at 34, you're still a baby in this industry, even though you can be in it for 10 plus years. So it's been interesting and been a lot of fun. And so excited. There's so many different facets, and we're gonna take a little detour down one right now with Coopertition, which is
Coopertition is one of those things. I'm excited to talk about it because when you and I were on doing your podcast, it kind of came up, and there was so much that we could talk about it. And now more than ever in our industry, I mean, again, we hear about competition is strong more than ever. Yeah. I think competition is extremely fierce within our industry, but just because we're competitors, and I've mentioned this on the show before, if you and I, again, being an originator at heart, still being a licensed originator, if I'm competing against you, or if you're a lender competing against another lender, or whoever it may be, if you put me on a court with you and we're playing against each other, you bet I'm going to bring my A game. I'm going to try to kick your ass on the court all day long. I'm going to try to beat you. But when we get off the court, that doesn't mean we can't shake hands. And that means we can't be friends. Like you look at athletes these days, and honestly, sometimes I think they're a terrible example of that, because sometimes there's these rivalries, and sometimes like it's just like all negativity all the time. And Jim, more than ever, we don't need that in our industry. We need this cooperation that you're talking about. We need to help. We need to unite as an industry, because honestly, consumers are the ones they're the ones taking the loss. When we as an industry are fighting, it ultimately affects the consumer, it affects the home buyer, and that's what we don't want. So this cooperation is such a cool idea. And again, even you as a company, like you found ways to cooperate with other competitors in the past.
Well, there's, so many of the same struggles that people have, but, taking a step back, cooperation is what's called a portmanteau, which is just French for made up word, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a combination of cooperating and competing at the same time. And I think it happens so much in this industry, right? I don't even know the number of licensed originators, probably in the hundreds of thousands, right? If you have a mindset where every 100,000 of those people are a competitor of yours, you're setting yourself up for failure.
100%.
To your point about being one-on-one with someone on the court, sure, maybe sometimes you and another loan officer have the same lead and they're deciding between you or that person.
Sure.
I'm sure that happens, right? But
Yeah.
how many people are you actually competing at that level with? How many times instead are you just you and that person on the same team, and on the other side it's a large lender coming in to change things, it's regulation, it's figuring out all of the different things in this industry. So I think when people have kind of a mindset of plenty, it just sets them up for success, because generally speaking, one, I don't think anyone's doing anything cool enough that someone is going to steal it and ruin your secret sauce at the end of the day. We talked about this before.
100%.
I don't want to call a mortgage a commodity necessarily, but there are a lot of similarities between companies, and the main differentiator comes down to your level of service and your relationship with that person. And a competitor can't really take that from you.
No, you're too nice. Calling mortgage, I think loan officers are a commodity, which is being one myself. I don't mean that in offense in any way. I mean that in the fact that, like you said, there are hundreds of thousands of licensed loan officers. So what are you doing? But that's why we're having this discussion too. Is you have to find ways to differentiate yourself. You have to find ways to collaborate. I love that you mentioned too, is a lot of lenders out there, they have similar products, they have similar rates. So as originators in particular, as companies, finding those ways to really make it so, again, you're unique, you're cooperating with those around you, making what you have to offer the absolute best, like the strongest. That's what's cool. That's why this conversation is so relevant to right now, is because if you're just by yourself trying to do it all alone, trying to figure it out, you're going to lose. But the ways that we all succeed is when our competitors, is when, those people we see as competition, they're stepping up their game. We step up our game, and then we find other ways to cooperate, which makes us stronger.
Yeah, and I've seen that throughout my time a ton from my side, where I have a close friend of mine, Dean Kohler. He runs a company called Title Tap. Great guy, and we're kind of competitors with one maybe really specific product, but at the end of the day, our clients, there's just no overlap. It's just not something that really matters at all. And we've actually become great referral partners, because we know when we talk to someone who's a better fit for the other one. And that relationship has benefited me way more than trying to be competitive. Or I have another friend who was a title agent originally. Now he has a company in the industry, Title Box. And he was a potential client of mine, and he was working with a competitor, and I could have been saying, hey, you're working with a competitor, I don't want to talk to you, give me your business. But I didn't really care. And the value I got from him as a client would have been so much smaller than the value from him as a friend and someone in the industry and something to talk about. So I think you have to take that mindset of transaction based and just look and shift to the relationship, because I think there's so much more that you can get. And people who've been in this industry know products change, people change, companies, so many things change. So if you're on a good friendly basis with people at other companies, it's only going to help you in the future.
That's exactly it. Having that mindset, having a growth mindset. One of my favorite books is Carol Dweck's Mindset. Not having that fixed mindset of hey, I have the secret sauce, what I have, no one else has. If you think that, I think there's probably so few instances of that actually being the case. Of maybe you have some proprietary software, or you have something, but even with that being the case, most people have what you have. There is no secret sauce, especially when it comes to business practices within our industry. And that's why having this mindset of there's plentiful, there's a lot of opportunity to go around, even with some of the things that are coming down the pipeline. Is they're predicting that this year is not going to be quite as good as last year. Last year was an absolute banner year. There's still plenty of business to go around. But as I say that doesn't mean you should all be slacking. You should all sit back and oh yeah, you know what? Great year. We're going to continue to have a good year. You continue to have to drive, and push yourself. And that's why I think this idea of cooperation is cool, because going back to what we've referenced multiple times, when you cooperate with other players in the game, that's how teams win. Look at every sport. I mean, other than, some individual sports, but as a whole, basketball, football, hockey, in whatever you want, baseball, it's a team sport. We have to be able to play together. And the more we do play together, the better we get, the better, look at baseball, look at some of these sports, is it makes the entire league better as a whole when players play together and when teams cooperate. So it's exciting. And I think, like I said, exciting times are on the horizon. I also think there are difficult times coming. And I think now more than ever, having these discussions and starting to look at the relationships, starting to look at like, who are we cooperating with? Who are we collaborating with that can ultimately not only make us better, but it makes us as an industry better. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I think, that's well said. There's just a lot more to be gained than there is to be lost by that. And I think looking at reasons why people maybe have that competitive mentality or don't want to do that is, I think a lot of it's just ego at the end of the day. Like, I've been at conferences and, seeing a competitor talk to someone who's a potential client or talk to someone else. It's like seeing someone dance with a girl you like or a guy you like, or whatever it may be. Like it kind of brings back that feeling a little bit. But ultimately, like, you're only hurting yourself by then not having that conversation. Like, you've talked with a competitor of mine, Closing Corp, brought them on the podcast. If I chose not to go on your podcast ever because of that, I'm not hurting you. I'm just hurting myself. Right. Sure. And the same way, too, I think it's interesting when you look at a media perspective of this, we both have podcasts. Are we competing? Sure. But how many people are going to say, hey, I can put on Shred right now, or I can put on Lodestar Lending Leaders, and I'm not going to listen to the other one ever. Right. Like it's just not something that happens.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. And that's just it is like, especially the podcast realm was a perfect example. Like I keep telling people, and people actually ask me quite often, they're like, oh, did you see another like an industry podcast popped up? What do you think about that? I'm like, awesome, fantastic. Because maybe I can think of that are maybe 20 or 30 that are actually consistent. And people are like, Josh, there's no way. There's hundreds of podcasts in our industry. They've come and gone. Trust me. We watch very, very closely. People will do, if you, like you mentioned at the very beginning of this, doing what you and I do, putting on a podcast, producing it, creating it, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of like focus. Having the discussion points, being able to actually come on and do this on a regular basis, even if you're doing it once a week or even once a month. So yes, are we competitors in the podcasting space? Yes and no. Like we both have a podcast, but I agree with you. People are going to go listen to your podcast specifically for the topics at hand that you're discussing. What I discuss is very, very different. The topics at hand are very different. So,
how many times you listen to a podcast, a guest comes on and you say, let me follow Josh. I like what he has to say.
Bingo.
Right. I 100%. Certainly hope that happens. Your episode's airing next week. I hope people check it out. It's just gonna help both of us.
No, 100%. And that's what I love about it is this idea of Coopertition. It continues to push that. It continues like, hey, I support Jim. Jim supports me. We want to see each other thrive. Want to continue to see each other grow. If you have the mindset of like, oh, no way, I'm never going to have, they're my competitor. Like, no way, never going to even talk about them. Again, that is such a fixed mindset. And you ultimately will lose. You absolutely, because again, there's no opportunity right in that mindset right now. You have to be looking outside. You have to be looking at mutually beneficial relations. I mean, just go back down to originators at hand. Look how you're partnering with, whether it's real estate agents or whoever your referral partners are, even your clients, like you still have to cooperate with them. You have to be able to build that relationship. And that's what ultimately breeds this idea that we're talking about. And like I said, it's an exciting time. We hope. And again, when you and I first mentioned this, we're like, we really hope people take this to heart and they start doing it. Let's see people start to practice this. Let's see companies start to say, hey, you know what Jim and Josh talked about, that's meaningful. I'm going to talk to my team about it. Let's find ways to cooperate with other companies. So that's all we can hope for, right, Jim?
Yeah. We will see. I mean, we're going to be forced to cooperate one way or another. So let's just hope that we can, have a different attitude towards it.
For sure. So I want to ask you this. The industry is ever evolving right now. We see things continue to change. What's something that you're looking forward to in the next, 6 to 8 months, 6 to 12 months in our industry?
I read an interesting article this week about basically someone who used his cryptocurrency investments to buy a house, right? And I think it's, short of paying for it in Bitcoin, like I think there's going to be, our industry is going to start to flirt with that more and more. So basically he was smart. Well, he was lucky probably and invested a lot of money in cryptocurrencies, made a bunch of money. So just like someone would own a bunch of stocks and it would be part of their assets that they would be able to turn into collateral for a loan or even cash out and put in the down payment, he went to do that. Right. So the exchange isn't necessarily happening with a cryptocurrency, but these things are getting enough into the normal kind of world that people, there's going to be implications. So if I have $1 million in cryptocurrency and assets, what does that mean for mortgages? Well, how do I put that on the 1003 form? How do I use that to calculate, my ability to get a loan, my credit worthiness? So I think even though the days of using Bitcoin to buy a home directly are far, far in the distance, the days of using blockchain to, record all parts of the transaction, I don't know if we'll ever truly get there, in my opinion, but there's going to be implications of this already that are coming, that are starting to come down. So it's interesting to see how it's kind of slowly creeping its way into the industry.
I agree. I think it is. I've been a huge fan of cryptocurrencies recently. I posted about it last week. I think this cryptocurrency, blockchain, DeFi, there's a lot of interesting conversation going on. And will it directly affect our industry? I think pieces. Well, I totally agree with you. I think there will be little pieces of it. Are you a crypto guy? Do you have any cryptocurrencies?
I do not. No, I don't. I don't even know enough to be dangerous, so I'm just staying out of it. I'm a spectator at best.
Dude, so, I'm the same way. I actually got lucky with Doge. I'm going to be honest. Somebody's like, hey, go buy Dogecoin. And, before but I'm not one of those guys who made millions. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll throw, a couple $100 at it, a couple $1,000 at it. And I'm like, oh, well, we got, that was cool. But I think it is still the wild, wild west when it comes to crypto. But I do agree. I think there will be things that come over into our industry, or even again, as we're talking about, that help us evolve. That help us
like Coinbase IPO'd, right? So someone can have money in Coinbase, they're invested in the crypto industry, and now that's an asset that lenders actually know what to do with. So
exactly.
It's eking its way in there.
Bingo. And that's just the thing is there's lots of implementations. There's lots of things that are happening that will affect our industry as a whole. So man, I like that, Jim. I agree with you. I think that's something fun to look forward to the next 6 to 12 months. Probably even a little bit longer than that, but there are fun things happening. But this is, again, this even to end is a perfect example. Talking about it, discussing it, cooperating together with these type of conversations. That's what's going to help us all succeed in the end. So
that's one thing the robots can't do when they finally take over as loan officers, right?
Right. They can't collaborate. They can't cooperate like we're doing. So Jim Paolino, thank you so much for joining us today. Always insightful. So much fun. Ladies and gentlemen, we all need to work together. We need to see, now I'm cooperation.
Cooperate. Yeah.
Cooperate. We all need to cooperate. Competition is good, but with cooperation, we can do so much more. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you have an incredible weekend. Be safe out there. Have an adventure, but most importantly, we appreciate you. We love you. Now it's time for all of you guys to go shred, go show up, hustle, repeat every day. See ya.